What is Urbit? That's one of the things that you guys mentioned that you're passionate about. What is Urbit?
Yeah, that's a super interesting question. So as this is part, we are really interested in like different technologies, and usually we take like very uh, a broad or like a very different technology approaches, and that's also, for example, we got light on Cardano because it was using UTXO model, which is the one that Bitcoin uses. But everyone else using smart contracts, they were using another account-based model, and that's how we were like, oh, let's check out this approach. Seems like very interesting. So Orbit is not a blockchain, but it's a decentralized peer-to-peer network. So that provides decentralized identity, a little bit of decentralized storage, among other things. Maybe I can put an example of like evolution of communication and messaging, so it's going to make more sense. So, for example, if you want to talk to someone, there are like multiple chat apps, and for example, someone could say like, oh, let's use WeChat. And someone will be like, what are you talking about, man? Like, WeChat is controlled by like this government. They can see your communication. That's like bad idea. Let's use something else. Okay, let's try with WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger. It's like, oh, that's much better, but I actually value my privacy a little bit more. Sometimes if I tell you something, I start seeing ads related to the thing that I told you. What's going on with that? I feel like someone is like, looking at our conversation to like sort of profit from what I'm interested.
It
I
happened to
don't
me
like
yesterday
that.
on Discord, actually. My friend and I were
No
talking about
way.
flight school, and immediately on my email, oh, advertising for flight school. I'm like, oh, there it is.
What a coincidence. Like,
Yeah.
wow. So that's what happens. And then you say like, okay, enough is enough. I'm going to move to Signal. Signal, no one is looking for anything. Nothing can happen. They even delete the messages. They're encrypted. That's the best option, right? But then you have the problem that Signal, the servers are centralized. So one day the US government could come and they could like tell them, oh, your servers are shut down. And you're like, you're not going to be able to use Signal because it's not an open network. You cannot like have like a server for Signal. And also for Signal, you need phone numbers. So you still can know that a phone number is texting another phone number. Maybe you don't know what they're texting, but you still like need a phone number that gets registered, and also your ISP can see that you're texting someone else. So that's also another downside, that the identities on Signal are linked to phone numbers, which is not great. And so enter Orbit. So with Orbit, you have decentralized identities, so you can have multiple identities, and also the network is, there is not like a Facebook or a Signal foundation that has servers where you connect, but actually it's like a distributed network of servers. So even if one gets shut down, or two or three or 10, there's like many hundred more that are going to be able to like move the messages. So this is like pretty cool because it's like a mesh network. It's like how it should like like maybe a little bit of like internet meant to be. That's like things are decentralized, and if something fails, it goes through some other like route. So I think that this is pretty cool. Orbit is still like pretty early in terms of like, it has taken a lot of time to develop this technology because it's like kind of complex.
Yeah.
But right now, you can create an identity which looks like a planet. They usually like really like the galaxies, and I wonder if that like sort of like unconsciously also guide us to like work with the Milkomeda concept. But identities in orbit are called planets. So you can easily get a planet almost for free, and then you can install landscape, and you can start like chatting. You can also go to like a sort of a decentralized Discord, which is called groups, and talking to people. So it's pretty cool, and there is
Yeah.
like more projects built on this, and only from this year they were able to achieve scalability. So now everything's like working like pretty fast. So I'm like excited to see how it turns out.
Yeah, that is really cool, and just seeing anyone build and work on anything that's completely different than what we all have now is really interesting and exciting for me, and I'm definitely going to look more into it after this podcast. So when I was looking through your guys' website, there are three main blockchains that you seem to be interested in, and I'm sure that's going to expand in the future. But currently, it's Cardano, Algorand, and Solana. Really, my question for you is, why those three? What about them really interests you and attracts you to those blockchains?
Yeah, so Cardano, I'm going to skip Cardano because
Yeah, we already know.
So about Algorand, and I think even Charles has talked about Algorand, that Silvio Micali is behind, and he's like one of the people that have won the Turing. What is it called? It's like the Nobel Prize for like computer science, and he even was behind some of the concepts behind zero knowledge proofs. So he's like a legend in the space. In cryptography, he's like so good. So he also created like a proof of stake consensus protocol, which is like also really, really interesting. So I really believe in Algorand. Personally, I'm excited. I really like what they're doing. Also, I think like the community is like really chill. It reminds me of like the community of Cardano that's like open, approachable, and more like friendly. And so that's why we got interested in Algorand. So we see that it has a lot of like potential growth. And the next one is Solana. So as I was mentioning, there's like different approaches for things, and for some approaches, some things are going to work well. For others, so Cardano tries to be as decentralized as possible, and that's amazing. Never change. But maybe for other approaches, you can be a little bit more centralized, and that's obviously going to impact some things. But also you can have more transactions. So Solana has so many transactions, but that's the trade-off, decentralization. So that's like another different approach that we feel like, it could be interesting. So for example, like video games or things like that, maybe they're going to be making more sense in Solana, but other options that you want to be like censorship resistant, you want to have like other level of like development that's like more like robust, maybe you're going to be using Cardano or Algorand. So that's why we saw in the like Solana as like not a competition to Cardano, but a complement to what Cardano is doing. And there's also one more chain that we're going to be working on, which is Terra. It's really interesting because Terra is behind UST, which is a decentralized stablecoin, which is like really, really interesting. And right now, the biggest decentralized stablecoin that's algorithmic is called DAI. It was in Ethereum, but Terra has UST. I don't know if I already passed DAI or it's going to be about to pass DAI, so I think that's like super interesting. And also through the Anchor protocol, you can get, I think, like around 15% APY when you delegate your USD. So right now, inflation in the US and in multiple countries is like pretty high. In the US, I think it's around 8%. And in South American countries,
yesterday is what they said.
Yep. It's slightly higher than what they were expecting. And that's what they announced. And usually like what they announce is lower than reality is. And so maybe I wouldn't be surprised that inflation is actually between 9 to 10. And so if you're not getting a yield on your dollars that's like close to that, you're actually losing purchasing power. So for example, if you go with $100 to a supermarket, the amount of things that you're going to be able to buy next year after inflation with those $100 obviously is going to be less. So how much these $100 need to grow to be able to buy this amount of things is like this inflation index, which is like around 8.5. I think it's higher, like at least 9.5. But your bank, when you deposit money in your bank in like a saving account, we can give you money, it's pretty good, we're going to give you 2%. And you're like, wait a second, I'm actually losing purchasing power. Maybe the number is going up, but it's not going up as much as inflation. So that's one of the things that I think is like super interesting in DeFi, that is like democratizing access to like good opportunities for like normal people. Because usually like if you have money, you can go to you can set up your family office, or you can access to like some specific hedge funds that all of them are going to give you like higher returns than the inflation. And you're going to be like, oh great, I'm not losing money. But the people that don't make that much money, they don't have access to that. So I think it's super unfair. And this is one of the things that blockchain and decentralized finance like interests me, because there's no like, you have more money, you get access to other better stuff.
Yeah. And honestly, 2% for a savings account, that's pretty high. I usually see like 0.1%,